Okay, so we have talked about African art. We have went through the different countries within the continent of Africa. We were captured, and when I say we are having that experience. We're trying to experience what the Africans went through so we can have a better understanding and really try to connect with it and understand the importance of this part of history and how it really helped lay down that foundation upon which the development of the African American artist formed. So we have talked about the different pieces of art that came out of Africa. We were captured. We were enslaved, shackled and chained and taken to the slave castle with family members, many times without. We're placed into the lower basement portion of the slave castle, having no clue what is going to happen to our fate. Ghana, Africa, 1619. So now, let's envision we're the Africans, we've been caught, we're in this cement basement room, no windows, having no clue of what is going to happen to us next. With shackles, iron shackles around our ankles, some with chains around their necks. So now, there's a ship that pulls up to the slave castle. We go through a door, the door of no return, and we're placed, shackled and chained to the person behind us and the person in front of us. And we're led on to this slave ship. So now envision you are that captured African that has been placed on this slave ship with no idea what your fate is going to be. So once we have been forced through the door of no return. So once we go through that door, we know that the life that we had, our identity, no longer exists. Now we're property. So I want us to look at this 3D model of a slave ship. And as we look at this 3D model, I want you to think about, was this the beginning of the foundation that was created or laid down for future Africans and African Americans to develop art on? Is this the development of African American artists? If it wasn't for slavery, if it wasn't for this horrific part of history, would we even have the development of African American artists? Think about that. Think about how this voyage, how the beginning of slavery, how the African diaspora had an impact on the development of African American art. So first we begin with the voyage. So as I said, the slaves are shackled and chained. They've gone through the door of no return. They're placed onto the slave ship. They're placed into the lower levels of the ship. And this model replicates about 350 to 400 Africans, enslaved Africans, that were placed on the ship. Now, keep in mind they were shackled and chained, and even while they're on this ship, making that 6 to 13 week voyage or longer, they're still shackled. And as you can see with this model, there are levels. Some ships had up to 3 levels of the enslaved Africans, one level on top of another. So there's no room for you to move to the left or the right. Imagine you're lying on your back, and above you is another row of humans. One dies. those bodily fluids are falling down on you. So you know that the ship was just ravaged with disease. There was a lot of deaths that occurred, a lot of sickness that occurred. So for many slave ships, especially the larger ones like this one, only half of the individuals made it to America. Many of them did not make the journey because they died. And history states that for some of the slave ships, when they're making that journey from Africa to America, there would be sharks that would follow along those ships because they knew the human cargo would be tossed over to the side. And so that was a meal for them. So as you can imagine, the conditions in which the Africans had to endure were far, far from pleasant. And so this 3D model really gives us a view into a slave ship. Now, during their voyage, they would be placed or brought to the upper deck, and then they would be hosed off. They would be placed, and while they was being hosed off, they're still being shackled. So those shackles were not taken off of the slaves. So after being hosed off, they were placed down below. So after they're hosed off, after they have been given maybe a potato or two, they're placed back down into the lower levels of the slave ship. So here we are on a ship. We're seeing people die around us. We're hearing some individuals to scream out because they're going mad. They can't move. What's happening around them, it's hard for them to stay in a good frame of mind. But this is the harsh conditions in which the enslaved Africans had to endure for 6 weeks or longer. Some made it to America, but it's estimated that on most of the slave ships, there was only half of the enslaved that would make it to America. So, as we journey on, we reach Jamestown, Virginia, 1619. And this is where our next journey begins.